let me ask you a question about how you feel about your relationship with your direct and supervisory managers at work. How connected do you feel to their vision and what they ask you to do? According to my friends at the American Psychological Association, they've got some illuminating data that may help you answer this very question. While 91% of managers today believe that cultural alignment is critically important, only an estimated 40% of today's American organizational leaders feel fully connected to their organizational culture, which is noted by my friends at Gallup. Well, in this episode, we'll take some time to explore the powerful connection between workplace relationships, trust, and business success with HR operations expert, my friend April Morgan. Research continues to reinforce what great leaders already know. Great relationships drive results, according to my friends at Gallup and PricewaterhouseCoopers. 93% of business executives agree that building and maintaining trust is a key cornerstone of strong relationships, which directly impacts the bottom line. At the same token, 85% of today's American CEOs rank employee engagement as one of their top priorities, often fueled by meaningful interpersonal connections. Meanwhile, data from the U.S. Chamber of Commerce reveals that 70% of today's modern American employee says that their relationship with their manager plays a vital role in their decision-making process, whether to stay or leave a company. Against this backdrop, April Morgan shares how she assists organizations in scaling their organizations without losing their people, processes, or compliance structure, which keeps them strong. She's got over 20 years of experience. She operates at the intersection of people operations, risk management, and structure, building the infrastructure that companies need to grow sustainably. She's the founder of Elevate People Ops. She partners with startups, scaling organizations in the manufacturing, government contracting, and other high-compliance industries to design systems which support leadership, decision-making, and mitigating risk, all to enable growth and strengthen culture, all without compromising compliance. We also dive into her new book, Married to the Job. Work isn't a job, it's a relationship. It reimagines work as a relationship built on trust, communication, consistency, and accountability. The book uses relatable analogies such as swiping right on resumes to navigating long-term commitments and even workplace breakups. Morgan blends humor with real-world HR insights to rethink how we view the world of work. And she joined me this week to tell me more. I'm Kevin McShann. Let's have this conversation. excited to be with you today, April, and I want to welcome you to the program. And I'm super excited to talk to you today about how work is a relationship, my friend. It's great to see you, and happy Thursday to you.
Well, happy Thursday to you as well.
Absolutely. So, my friend, I'm going to start right there and ask you why you believe that human resources professionals and organizational leaders should look at work as a relationship, my friend. Why do you think that's so important?
Well, with AI and a day and time when everything's automated, we have lost that human touch, that human interaction, right? And as much as some people might not like people, so to speak, they miss that human interaction. And if you can maintain a solid relationship with them, that's how you're going to have longevity with your employees. Every manager will tell you, every business will tell you that their greatest asset is their people. But that doesn't mean you have to put money into it. That just means you have to put time and energy into it, just like any relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And talk to me about the importance of treating people, meeting them where they are and giving them the autonomy to make decisions that affect the entire organization. Because I'm someone who believes if you give the power of delegation to your employees, they're more apt to sort of row in the same direction you want the organization to go, my friend. So talk to me about giving the autonomy to the employees that you're in charge of leading as a leader and how important that is, my friend.
That really is empowering people, right? You hire these people because they possess a special set of skills, correct? So when you have them, you nurture them, you help them grow just like a plant by giving them the power to grow, right? To bring ideas and suggestions and things you never really thought about because that's that subject matter expert that you hired to do that, right? So they're going to grow, they're going to give more ideas because it's welcomed. But if you poo poo something and you shoot it down or you don't listen and you don't foster that environment for engagement and innovation, you're not going to grow. You're not going to be successful. So that's one of the things that I think is very, very important for people to do is you hire them for a reason, empower them, foster that growth, foster those ideas, try to implement them where possible so that people keep giving those ideas and those suggestions to help you grow in the direction that you want to go.
Yeah, absolutely. Now, I know that you help organizations develop the infrastructure that enables companies to grow smoothly without disrupting their staff processes or compliance, my friend. I know that you've got more than 20 years of experience in this work, and your work sits at the intersection of people, operations, and risk, guiding organizations from early growth to structured scalability, my friends. And tell me about what makes you so fabulous and why you love what you do, my friend.
Well, I think it's just because of what you said. I started helping small businesses grow from nothing into something, right? And take something, this vision, this entrepreneur itch they had, and make it exciting and new. And you're a part of that. You get that innovation, your voice is heard, you're contributing to make something successful and great, not just for that owner, but for the employees within it. They grow, they benefit from it, they shine. And that's exciting to me. I did that with another small business. I'm with IWC Innovations right now. And they really, innovations in their name, but they innovate by allowing employees to bring their ideas forward. If I have a suggestion like, hey, have we thought about this? And they're like, you know what? We haven't. Let's try it. And they'll let me go forth with it. And if it's successful, great. And if it doesn't and it doesn't work, it doesn't cost a lot of money, that's okay too. But the great thing is that they like what they hear. They listen to me. I feel valued. I feel heard and seen in this small company, and it's amazing. It's an exciting thing to be a part of. It's a great environment to work in, and our employees thrive because of that.
Yeah, so let's talk about why today is such an exciting day and the launch of your book, my friend. What do you want people to know about the book, why you wrote it, and why relationships at work are really the cornerstone of progress. What do you want people to know about the book, my friend?
So I wrote this book. I started 4 years ago, and when my dad died at the funeral, I told everyone that I was going to make sure that my dad's legacy lived on even after he passed away, because he was a great man that raised my sisters and I. And I I realized that with this journey that I wanted to leave something behind for my kids too, a legacy, as you said at the beginning. So I wrote the book so that I could show them the importance of relationships and how they marry one another. Throughout my years, 20 years, as you said, in this business, I've seen how you swipe left or right for an employer and you make these decisions, and then you're excited for the first 90 days and you perform well. And then after 90 days, you start finding, just like a new relationship, some of those things that annoy you, or the things that were adorable before aren't adorable anymore. And then you start losing that spark. So, how do you keep the spark alive to have a long lasting relationship at home and at the workplace? And I threw out the idea that there's a work life balance, because life wins. If things don't work at home, you're not going to be successful at work, right? You're going to change jobs if you have to, you're going to break up. So it really is a transition. And I felt like if you could start having those relationships with each other, you could really start to love what you do. I love what I do and the people that I do it for. So I want everyone to have that same experience. So a job isn't a job, it's a great relationship that will last you through retirement.
Yeah, absolutely. And to that point, the Global Leadership Development study from 2025 found that 43% of organizational leaders use both internal and external leadership training programs. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on how we can better incorporate, relationship building into leadership training as a core principle. How do you think we can get this done most effectively, my friend?
So, internal training is fantastic. You're going through policies and procedures, you're doing compliance, all fantastic. But if you do some external training, it's just like your kids. You can tell them 100 times the same thing over and over again, but if someone else says it, they're going to listen, right? Same thing for your employees. So that's why my son has a business and I help him with it, Elevate People Ops LLC. And the great thing about those training opportunities is we work with leaders and we say, what are your pain points, such as emotional intelligence, for example? Tell me your pain points and I can address it. So I might be saying the same thing you said, but they're going to listen because it's an outside perspective. And sometimes, like emotional intelligence, it's a pretty standard thing that we all should know, but you need that reminder every once in a while. So that's why external training is so very important to an organization and can really help that momentum and keeping that spark alive in that relationship, and those ideas come back to light again to keep everything fresh for the employees and those leaders.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely. And April, I used to be the lead ambassador for the Ontario Chamber of Commerce on a project called the Discoverability Network. It was the first online job matching portal for employers and people with disabilities to get connected. And one of the sayings that we had at the chamber was that you get more done through collaboration. And I'm curious to ask you about performance impact when it comes to, collaboration, because Lincoln says that companies that encourage collaboration are 5 times more likely to excel, and the quality of their decisions are made better 66% of the time if they foster an environment that encourages collaboration and as a core principle for high quality ideas. So tell me about your perspective on collaboration and how important it is to developing a highly functioning organizational culture. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Great statistics. You know your stuff, Kevin. Awesome job. So the great thing about collaboration is, and not one of the important things about collaboration is, people have to feel like they can collaborate, right? Do you feel connected? This is where the relationships from the book comes in. Do you feel connected to the people that you can collaborate, that your ideas are welcome, that your thoughts are going to be heard? And if you can, then you're going to collaborate more. You're going to bring some more of those suggestions there. Small groups, always beneficial. Sometimes some closed loop questions are beneficial, and then you take those closed loop questions where they might feel more welcome and open to share, and then you bring it to the bigger group and say, okay, some people said this. You don't have to tell me who you are, but what do you think about this? Just driving that engagement is really going to help collaboration, because again, it comes back to relationships and culture, which is really going to drive those changes and drive collaboration of fellow team members. They have to be vested in the relationship.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, how do you think we can go about structuring and strengthening organizational culture in today's modern American workforce without compromising compliance? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, compliance and culture go hand in hand, right? So compliance is checking a box, culture is making it happen. You can have compliance all day long, risk assessments and standards that you have to adhere to, but if the employees don't understand why they're doing those things, you won't have compliance, right? If they don't understand the rules that you have, or they're not universally enforced, they're not going to do that. And if they're not universally listening to those policies and procedures, find out why. Does it make sense? As a company grows, certain metrics that you put into place might work for that group of people, but as you change, you might have to change. And as employers, we have to recognize that, right? We have to pivot sometimes. That's why it's important to look at those policies and those procedures to make sure they're still relevant, that they're accurate, are they being adhered to? And if not, how do you get that buy-in and change that culture of compliance for your team members? The with them, what's in it for me, the why behind what we're doing.
Yeah, absolutely. And Will, I'm also interested to get your views on building strong employee recruitment and retention strategies, because it's much more than onboarding employees today, and it's important to invest in people if you want them to have a long-term commitment with or inside your organization. So I'm curious to get your thoughts on how we can reimagine employee engagement to foster long-term commitment. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Wow, you bring up a great point. If you think about the hiring process, you do a phone interview with someone, you might talk to them in an in-person interview, and then you hire them expecting a long-term relationship when you've known them for 1 hour, right? So I think that multiple interviews are good, but it's very good for the recruiter to be open, honest, and transparent. Is our organization perfect? No. We're going to make mistakes. We're still learning. We're in the startup stages. We're doing this and this, because that builds that trust from the beginning. As long as an employee knows exactly what they're getting themselves into, and then you understand that person feels trusted in you and they're giving those things to you, that's how you're going to have a good startup relationship with your candidate. Then don't just hire them and set them out to the wolves. You have to have ongoing training and check-in, stay interviews, asking for peer feedback. The constant communication is where we're missing, keeping people there on how we can do well. And not just for the employees, but how are the managers doing, right? Anonymous surveys on leadership and how they're doing, and scorecards, terrific. Terrific on how we can do better, and making sure that we put a pulse on the organization to keep that heartbeat going within the company. So continuous ongoing training, lots of transparency in what you're doing, having those uncomfortable conversations to find a new comfortable, so that you are delivering the goods and you're transparent in what you're selling to your employees.
Yeah, absolutely. And April, as you know, I have a disability and I was born with cerebral palsy, and I work, a part of my work is to inspire and encourage organizations to rethink the place that people with disabilities have within organizational culture. And I always tell organizational leaders that it's not charity, but a competitive advantage to hire folks with disabilities. And I'm curious to get your thoughts on how we can remove the attitudinal barriers that exist within organizations to make sure that they know that hiring people with disabilities can be a competitive advantage. What are your thoughts there, my friend?
Well, Kevin, I have to say that you're amazing, right? You don't let anything hold you back. And most people that have a disability, they have the same drive that you do. They want to be treated like everyone else. And it really does add an added value to the culture. In my organizations that I've worked with in the past, we had individuals that were hearing impaired. We had individuals that were completely deaf. We work with Easter Seals here in Indiana to get people with different disabilities to come and work for us, whether it's filing, whether it's working in administrative positions, things to that effect, helping with those things. And they're quite more capable than what anybody would give them credit for. And the different values and beliefs and opinions that they have on the world really are insightful, and it really drives engagement. It really does. Because if you can do the things you can do with, I don't want to say limitations, but with some of the hurdles that you have to overcome. I've watched your videos. You are working out constantly. You're putting in the effort to make these things successful for yourself. If you can do those things, my day's not so bad, right? I can do the same things that you can do, right?
Yeah.
So I really am more inspired by you because you're putting in the work. And I'm like, man, this guy's put in more work before 10 o'clock than I have in an entire day sometimes. So people with disabilities, they inspire you, they inspire an organization, and should be far more embraced and how it can help an organization with the culture in general.
Yeah, absolutely. And well, I'm curious to ask you about how do you think societal pressure affects organizational leadership? We can't turn on the news without having, some sort of headline that isn't always positive. And I this is coming from a news guy. I love covering the news, as you know, but everything within moderation, my friend. And I'm curious to ask you, how do you think societal pressure and media, influence affects the way, the modern leader today of organizations chooses to lead a company? How much of an influence do you think that is, my friend?
I think it has an impact on the organization. You have to acknowledge how it impacts the news and society impacts your employees. But when you come to your workplace, that should be something that they're not worried about, right? We have to be focused on the mission at hand. And this goes back to my military days when I worked with the National Guard. What is the mission that we're working on? What are we trying to accomplish? Now, I understand that gas prices might be high, or I understand that there's all these other things going on. But my workspace should be a breakaway from all the extra noise that's out there so that I can give you a safe place where you can feel safe and secure and focused on the mission at hand. So keeping those things in the back of your mind on how it impacts your people's pocketbooks, how it impacts their state of mind is very, very important. But trying to make a place where they have a breakaway from that reality at their work is really what I think employers are striving to do right now, that breakaway so that you can have a break from all the outside noise.
Yeah, absolutely. And, April, just because I'm personally curious, I'm curious about the emotions that you went through writing this book from a personal perspective. I know that you dedicated to your dad, but based on your more than 20 years of experience in executive leadership, I'm wondering about the emotions you went through writing this book and how best that you personally connected to what you're putting out to the world today, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
Well, it was very emotional with the passing of my dad. The joy I have with my husband, who's fantastic, and I'm leaving this to my children. Um, but I realized when I look back at this, the journey of my employment has been a roller coaster myself. Had highs, it's had lows, it's had breakups, it's had its fair shares and ups and downs. And reflecting on that, I'm a better person today because of that growth, right? I'm a better person today for the decisions that had to be made. And I've grown a lot. And so I look back at that and I welcome the change. And I think that those things that happened are happen for a reason, and I'm meant to be exactly where I am today because of those changes. And I think every person can relate to that. You have all these things and you get in the middle of a situation and you're like, oh, how am I ever going to get out of this? But then you find your way out and you're like, I'm exactly where I need to be. So you just trust the process. So it was emotional, it was reflective, it was eye opening. I'm grateful for all the opportunities I've had. I'm grateful for the opportunities to come. And for me, it was a bit therapeutic to kind of look back at my relationships, both in work and outside of work, and really realize how blessed I have been for many, many years now and the many blessings I have to come. So, very emotional.
Yeah, absolutely. And I know that part of your work also helps organizations with addressing service delivery. And I wanted to ask you this question because, as you know, outside factors like inflation, the price of gas, and all of these economic factors are changing the way people spend their money or how they budget their money. But so, from an employee perspective, I'm curious, what would be your message to making sure that employers know about the changing sort of landscape of employee needs from a benefit perspective, considering the challenging economic times that some are living in today? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
I think it's so important, again, to have your pulse on what's going on within the organization as a leader. As a leader, a part of your job in the relationship is to care about your team members' mind, body, and soul. Financial wellness is part of that. So I partner with a man named Jim Vito. He's fantastic and he teaches financial wellness and what that means and what it looks like for employees to help them make educated decisions on what they're doing. Do you know that the average student does not take any type of banking or checkbook classes or anything like that in high school? And then they're expected to come out into the world and be able to be fiscally sound. Many young people do not even have 401ks, so they're not thinking about retirement. So it's very important for, as an employer with financial wellness, what you're speaking to is to maybe bring in some financial wellness. Advisors like Jim, they don't cost anything. They just hope that you work with them on things. And they'll come in and they'll actually do financial wellness for you for free and help educate your team members and make sure that they know what they're doing to be set for success. And then you, as the employer, benefit from those things. So it doesn't have to be as complicated as what people think because there are great resources out there that will help you to make your employees independent and make the smart decisions with their monies.
Yeah, absolutely. And April, I'm also curious to ask you about the role innovation plays in supporting flexibility and modernizing organizations today. My friend, how important do you think innovation is to sort of modernizing today's modern workforce, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
Well, my son, he's in his business too. We identified that a lot of the younger generations, those kids that went through and had COVID and had that lack of social interaction, they really are only reached by text message. So your recruiting methods have to change, right? You're texting these candidates to get them to respond to you. Back in the day, I'd just give them a phone call and have a phone interview. But now I'm screening via text message, right? They're on social media. So you have to keep up on all of the latest technologies so they can see some of the engagement that's there. I think that a lot of kids now or younger generation also see that their parents are working well into their 60s and then traveling. And now you have van life. I have a young girl that worked for us and she's out there doing van life right now and she's making money doing things. Shout out to Destiny. And she's just living her best life with her husband in a van and they're doing great things. So like the organizations need to change to the new mindsets that are there and they need to recognize what they are and pivot with that, because the one thing I think that we got out of COVID and the one thing that we are getting out of this, the younger generation, and that I love working with my son on, is working with people to make sure that we meet their needs so that they are successful in the organization, whatever that means.
Yeah, before I ask you my next question, I'm gonna tell you a personal story. So I used to be the lead job developer for the YMCA in my hometown, and for better or for worse, I worked in a very small department. It was only about 5 or 6 people, And for better or for worse, again, my desk was directly across from my boss. So I had made the decision to answer my boss's email, something she needed my opinion or a stance on about 6 o'clock at night because April, I have to admit, I'm a recovering email perfectionist. As soon as an email gets into my inbox, I had a tendency to want to answer it right away. And then, my boss came in the next day and she said, you're once I leave my office or my desk at 4:30, I don't look at my work stuff unless it's an emergency until the next day. And she said, you don't always have to have the on switch. And ever since then, I've gotten better at giving myself grace. So that's a long way of asking you about work-life balance, my friend. And I know you brought it up earlier, but I wanted to share that story with you and ask you, how do you think the modern organizational leader and employee can balance rather their work and life balance, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
Well, I'm with you on the emails. I cannot stand. I have a ping and I got to answer it. So I'm with you, friend. But that's just the way I was. I want to make sure I check that box and that person knows I'm attentive to whatever their needs are. But to your boss's point, you have to be able to turn off, right? And that turning off is so, so very important. Now, if that is causing a problem in your life, and for me, it's not. I answer my messages when I have time and I make my family a priority. And when there's time, I do the things for my kiddos, the things that need to be done, and then I can turn back on for work. But if my family life was struggling, I wouldn't be answering those messages. I'd have to have a conversation with my boss and say, hey, look, this is really putting a strain on my marriage. This is putting a strain on things. So the work-life balance is really, if things don't work at home, they're not going to work here. One of the employers I work with, they work in an area where there's no buses, no public transportation. They have a rule, of course, you have to be to work on time, right? However, many of the people that go to their organization have to go and take Ubers. But so they're a lot more flexible with those individuals. In order to keep this great employee, they might have to understand that their Uber might be late or their transportation might be an issue, and they work with them. So the work-life balance, it goes both ways, right? It's a dance. And you as employers need to make sure that you are dancing with them and they're dancing with you, but we're not stepping on each other's toes when you're dancing, right? So I feel like work-life balance is kind of a myth. If things don't work at home, Maslow's hierarchy of needs, if you can't get the basic principles, they're going to switch. They're going to break up. They're going to go somewhere else. If they don't feel like they're being fulfilled at the job, they're going to change. If things aren't working at home and their performance slips and you're not understanding and gracious with that, they're going to leave. So I feel like you have to have more of a delicacy there, but you have to understand sometimes life wins and be okay with that and for your employees and for yourself.
Yeah, absolutely. And my friend, I wanted your opinion on this Yahoo Finance study from earlier this year that said that 41% of organizational leaders cite, competing priorities and a lack of resources as obstacles to improving risk management. And I'm curious, what are your thoughts on leaders having to do more with less, but also keeping in mind the need for risk management? What are your thoughts there, my friend?
That is a struggle because budgets, they don't just change overnight, but risk never really goes away, right? So you have to mitigate that by saying priorities, what's there, and then educating your team members on those risks to minimize them, right? So just because you can't put some of those things in place right now because fiscally you might not be able to financially afford it, how can you educate your team members to help you mitigate that risk at the lowest level possible? So it's education, it's understanding the why for those team members, and then still putting it as a priority, but making a task list of what needs to be done. Maybe what the employees are struggling with the most, you put your energy there. first, right? Because you can get their buy-in and help with some of those things, but the other things that you can't, maybe that's where you need to have that extra security and risk management there. But it really comes down to the employees understanding, implementing it, managers reinforcing that, supporting that, and helping to lead the way when it comes to risk management.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, how do you think organizational and people prosperity are interconnected? What correlation do you see between the two, my friend?
Well, prosperity comes in different ways, right? You can give somebody money and that's one way to be prosperous, but you can give them fulfillment and that's another way to make them prosperous, right? So if you're in an organization, as you said, that was kind of struggling fiscally, how else can you, without monetary gain, go out and help acknowledge those employees through culture, through engagement, through reward, through advancement opportunities, through growth, through training, time off, understanding. There's so many other ways that you can feel prosperous, right? I feel fulfilled in my job because I'm able to take my daughter to school every day. I'm able to be present at home more. That makes me prosperous. So you really have to know your partner, right? Your relationship to see what drives them and make them prosperous in that relationship that way, right? Because it might not just be a monetary situation, it might be further fulfillment in other ways in their world, in their home life.
Yeah, absolutely. And based on your experience in people operations, I'm also curious to ask you, what do you think is the best way to motivate employees today to give their best effort at work, my friend? What are your thoughts there?
Well, motivation, it changes from person to person, right? I know people that just come in and they want to punch a clock and they want to leave and that's it. There's other people that are driven by different things. So really knowing your partner, knowing your person and seeing what drives them, what makes them tick, what they need and fulfilling it that way. It's a relationship and no relationship's the same. So you have to make sure that you cater the needs to your team members. You know who they are. Leaders, lean on your managers to make sure you know those relationships, what they need, what fulfills them, and then cater it to that. It's not cookie cutter, right? It's not just donuts and coffee in the mornings. It has to be that personal touch, that personal investment into that relationship where people really feel like they're valued, they're heard, they're seen. And then that's what's going to drive the organization to be successful. So unfortunately, it doesn't come standard and it's not a cookie cutter way if you really want to get to the core of making the individual successful. Those things help, but genuinely, you need to invest time and efforts into the relationship to know what drives those individuals.
Yeah, I've got three questions left for you, and this one I'm very excited to ask you because I believe that in business and building up any business success starts with relationships, and I'm curious to ask you. I believe that success starts with building great relationships, and that starts with networking because networking is the key to progress when you make business relationships. So, what do you think is the key to nurturing a business relationships and establishing that as a pillar for success, both in organizational culture and in business success? What are your thoughts on how to build thriving relationships, my friend?
Well, any relationship is built on trust, right? And it's built on dependability within that. So if you're going to network and partner with other people, they need to trust in you. They need to be able to trust your word, the things that you're saying. You need to be reputable in what you're doing in order for them to continue that relationship. And it's just like any relationship that you have that comes from honesty, transparency, and showing up when you say you're going to show up so that you can depend on that partner in whatever it is that you're doing. So just like any relationship, the core of that has to be that trust and that foundation. And when you do that, other people are going to lean on you. They're going to depend on you. They're going to want to work with you. They're going to want to network. They're going to shout from the rooftops how great you are because you're that person, right? So I have that niche of people, like I mentioned my friend Jim, or I mentioned different people because I know that I can count on them. They're a reliable network of people that I have built within my group and my organization, that if you need something, you go to that guy, right? So that's how you do that, is to maintain those relationships, those touch points, those check-ins, by honesty, transparency, and just being reliable in what you're doing. It's not hard, but it's that simple.
Yeah, absolutely. And my friend is a speaker. I'm always looking for ways to improve my value proposition and helping, organizations solve their pain points. So I'm curious, how important is it, do you think, for organizational leaders to really know their own value proposition and the importance of knowing that so that they can be the best versions of themselves as a leader of an organization? So, how important do you think value proposition is for leaders, my friend?
So very important. You can break this down to the basics for your team members. Many of the organizations I work with to do this, we do a standard SWOT analysis. A SWOT analysis will sit and identify your strengths, your weaknesses, opportunities, and strengths. And they'll look at your strengths and they'll want to capitalize on your strengths. They'll want to minimize any weaknesses, capitalize on opportunities, and reduce threats that you have. So what we've done is not just an individual SWOT analysis, but we've done an organizational SWOT analysis. And we ask our team members to do the SWOT. We've asked partners to give us the SWOT, to tell us what those strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats are. And from that, we transform our culture, we transform those things, we tackle at least 3, and then we make our SMART goals from that. And then we try to improve our processes and make our organization the best that we can be and truck away at those things. So we have a workshop on that, and it's really beneficial in doing those things to make the organization stronger with the simple basics of business: SWOT analysis and SMART goals.
Yeah, absolutely. Very, very important. Yeah, so I'll just ask you the question again. So my last question, April, has to do with mentors and your own individual legacy. And I'll give you a quick story. So one of my mentors in life is my middle school principal, Dr. Carol Crowley, because the day I started my fourth grade year of elementary school, I was called down to the principal's office, not because I was in trouble, but she knew that my doctor, who had performed all of my surgeries for my disability, had told me when I was 9 years old that I would never walk. So the next day, Dr. Crowley called me into her office, and she had everyone assigned to my file, from teachers to social workers to my parents who were also there. And I had went through the story of what Dr. Carey had told me the previous day, and at the end of the story, Dr. Crowley looked at me and she said, "The only limitations on your life are the artificial ones you place on yourself personally." So my final question has to do with both your own individual life and legacy and how you want that to be defined, but I also want to know about the mentors in your life that helped to shape the person you are today, my friend. What are your thoughts there?
Well, similar. I growing up, I grew up when we didn't have a lot of money, right?
Mhm.
And so when I talked to my high school guidance counselor, they kind of coldly said to me that I wouldn't be going to college. I should just stick to working at a fast food restaurant. And so after I graduated high school, I started working with the National Guard, and I met the governor, and I was with the adjutant general, and I would send photos of myself doing well to that guidance counselor, just as a kind of like, hey, look, you were wrong. And I kept sending these things. And when I graduated, here's me at college. And she finally wrote back to me and she said, "I don't know if I helped you or I hindered you, but either way, I'm glad you're doing well." And what I took away from that is that was me, right? That person pushed me to be great. So pushed me to say, no, I'm going to break the stereotypes, right? I'm not going to be an alcoholic like my mother. I'm not going to be poor. I am going to be educated, and I'm not going to have the limitations that were supposed to be set in my life at that time. I'm going to overcome that. And I did. So that's one person. When I started with the National Guard, I started with a lady named Karen Manley, and she is my heart and soul. She was with the National Guard for many, many years, and I was this young HR person just wanting answers, wanting things, and she would make me slow down and she'd make me look things up and learn things and understand the processes. And she was phenomenal in everything that she did. And she is one of the reasons that I am the way I am and as driven as I am because of her. But there are so many other people, like the people that I've worked with that helped with my son growing up and mentoring me and being kind of like that mother, like my friend Judy. Or there's people that I worked with, managers that I work with, like Joe, who had a business and was growing it and was driven to see success and empowered me to make the decisions that I made to make me where I'm at today. So there's lots of little people that made that huge impact on me. And then above all, my husband, my partner in life pushes me to limitations that I never knew before and believes in me so much that the sky's the limit for me. So those are the people that are driven me, the core 4 or 5, as I say, that are making me the person that I am. And I have a lot of great support that helps me along the way with my family and friends. But those are the people that shed a little light in my life, that made things great for me, that believed in me, and some that didn't, that drove me to be better than what I ever thought I could. And so that's what this journey has been about, thanking those people and really bringing everything full circle.
Absolutely. Well, April, I have to tell you, I'm proud of you for writing this book.
Aw.
Book, I know it's a momentous day for you, and I want to know if people want to get the book or can connect with you personally. What's the best way they can do that?
Well, you can go to www.elevatepeopleopsllc.com. You can order the book, use the QR code. We have a code right now, which is Legacy 10, named after the legacy for my dad, and you can get the book for $10 for the next couple days. It's going to be on Amazon, connect through LinkedIn, April Morgan. On LinkedIn, I'm known as the vanilla ice of HR because if you got a problem, yo, I'll solve it. Yes, that's a tribute to Vanilla Ice.
Gotcha.
Um, but connect and let's talk because I love to geek out over HR. I really do want to make a positive impact on people's lives. So I look forward to connecting with your audience and you and staying connected because you are really a gem. I enjoy you so much.
Well, as I told you before this started, I will have my staff write you a commission check, and all I need is your. No, I'm only kidding. But I have to tell you, I am so thrilled and honored to have had the chance to to engage in conversation with you, my friend. I think you're doing wonderful work in the form of advancing HR and inclusive HR forward. I want to wish you the very best with the book, and I look forward to our next conversation. But for now, I will tell you that I thoroughly enjoyed engaging in conversation with you, and I want to thank you for being here, my friend. It's most appreciated.
I appreciate you, Kevin. I look forward to talking to you soon, and I'll get you a copy of the book, okay?
Fabulous! Sounds wonderful. I can't wait to read it, my friend.
All right, Kevin, you have a great day. Thank you for having me on. I appreciate you.